First of all, I think your analysis was very straight line. History doesn't run in a straight line.
Kid, you cannot tell your neighbor he is stealing ducks when you are stealing funds.
As High Commissioner, I was wrong. As Charandas Prasad, I reacted naturally how any person would have.
I did not come here for that kind of abuse. I did not come here for that kind of abuse. If you're going to go down that road, I'll walk off.
But it's all okay once they're talking. If they were talking, I could not have been here today.
You got ADHD.
I got that thing.
Calm down.
I think I've done enough in terms of taking our team out of trouble from losing.
Come on, Lou Taylor. That's good. I'm reading the script now, and the first person that comes to my mind to play a detective,
Yes,
but
okay,
an
he's good too.
erratic
Mikhail
detective, is Mikhail Rodriguez.
Why an African slapping Indian? Why a man and slap a woman? Look, girl, how you deal with that? You deal with that.
We must encourage platforms like this because it brings together different people and allows for discussions to take place in our country on a multiplicity of fundamental issues.
Kingdom, you apologizing for something you think I did is wrong. I don't want you to do that, and you should not have done that. Hi there, welcome to the CARICOM edition of the Freddie Kissoon Show. Wherever you are, good evening, good morning, good afternoon, good night. My co-host since February of this year, doing quite well, is Akash Persaud. Wherever you are, this is a national holiday. We celebrate one of the most important institutions in Guyana, and we have a guest here tonight who should know more about the Caribbean than any other living Guyanese because he has been an advisor to more than 4 presidents. He'll correct me, maybe 5 presidents. And we thought it appropriate to pick his brains about this entity called the Caribbean, of which Guyana is an integral part of. The CARICOM Secretariat is located here, and Guyana is larger than all the CARICOM countries. Our guest this evening needs no introduction, and I'm being bold to say that he is the longest serving public servant in the Caribbean and maybe the world. Mr. Christopher Kit Nascimento will tell us how long he has been in service, public service, whether consultant to a government, advisor to a government, minister in a government, in whatever form. I think it spans more than 50 years, maybe more than that. Mr. Nascimento has been around a very long time, and we thought we would like to pick his brains on what is this thing called CARICOM on its 50th anniversary. How does Mr. Nascimento see CARICOM, see the Caribbean? Is there a bright future for it, or is there much more that could be done? Once again, thanks for being here, Kit Nascimento, his 4th appearance on this program, and the way he is going, he isn't slowing down. I think we will have future presentations by him. Now for the protocol, Kit. Thanks for being here.
Thank you very much, Freddie, for those overly flattering remarks.
I should have said in my introduction that your wife called me to tell me she discovered, couldn't remember, but then she discovered it, your favorite Neil Diamond song. And it wasn't...
Which was never written by Neil Diamond.
Right. But she told me he sang it. But so it's not Song Blue.
Well, that's one of his songs, but that's not my favorite.
You know that one?
Unfortunately, no.
Which Neil Diamond song?
I know the Christmas songs because that's what they play around Christmas. You know, he did a lot of Christmas songs, right? Yes. Neil Diamond, yeah. So I know those Christmas songs.
Man is one of the most successful composer of popular music in the 20th century. My favorite for him is The Last Picasso. It has connection with my wife. But Kit, thanks for being here. And
It's my pleasure. Fred.
our first question is, this is 50 years of CARICOM. Is it working?
That's a tough question. It depends what you mean by working. I think for CARICOM is fulfilling a lot of the objectives it was established for, which of course is free trade, economic exchange and unity. It is not a political union. It is an economic union. The ambitions of the founders, Forbes Burnham, Eric Williams, Barrow, and from Jamaica, what was his name? Manley. Their ambition, I think, was to move from what was the West Indian Federation. We then became, as you know, CARIFTA, a free trade association, and eventually it morphed into CARICOM at the Chaguaramas Agreement. I think that was in the 1970s, somewhere in the mid-1970s, yes. I actually did some research, and if you want the actual facts, I have them here. And it has remained an economic union, but it is much more than that, or should be much more than that. It is a security union. It is meant to facilitate movement of people. It has done that in a rather limited way, I think. But on the whole, I would say CARICOM is a success in the sense that if we didn't have it, you'd have to have it. You'd have to invent it. Because it's, 20 countries, including associated members. And it's serving a population of about 60 million. And that collective togetherness makes us a more powerful, a more influential voice in world affairs. There is, of course, part of the treaty that we defend each other. That is becoming very usefully where Venezuela is concerned. But the shortcomings, I think, of CARICOM, and they will always be there, is the insular attitude of some of the leaders of the countries. Very differently from the way the European Union functions, which is a political union. And the leaders of independent countries in Europe give way to the requirements of the greater good of the Union. Our leaders are still leaders of tiny countries. And depending on the nature of the leader, less or more committed to Caribbean unity and Caribbean action. For instance, I think President Ali is very committed to it. He is a West Indian man. He's a Caribbean man, as was, I think, Burnham. But you have to look at some of the smaller islands and even the bigger ones. I'm not convinced that the current president of Trinidad and Tobago is fully committed to a CARICOM that is totally at one with each other, especially when it comes to the defense of our borders.
That's Prime Minister Keith Rowley.
Yes. All of them participated in Argyle, at the Argyle Agreement. In fact, they pushed for it. It was the CARICOM heads that supported the idea of meeting Maduro, and the Argyle Agreement grew from that. But it is questionable sometimes what some of them have said and done since then. And what you see is self-interest first, Caribbean interest next. But I suppose that's understandable. They're not elected by a Caribbean audience, they're elected by their own country audiences. And that is where perhaps the ultimate weakness of CARICOM is. But on the whole, I think it's been a success.
Akash?
Mr. Nascimento, it's an honor and a pleasure to be here sitting with you. As a follow-up to what Mr. Kissoon asked and what you spoke about just now with unity, last year when we celebrated the 50 years of CARICOM, it was celebrated under the motto of "In unity there is strength."
Right.
Mr. Nascimento, how united are we really though? And is there an issue of integration? Are there challenges in integration? But and how united are we? Because you just spoke that. I mean, when I look at CARICOM, we should really be, one body, fighting for each other, for sustenance and this single market economy and all that, being brothers and sisters. But how united are we?
Well, that's the difference between economic and political union.
Mm-hmm.
We are not a political union. And therefore, in all foreign affairs, one's country's self-interest prevails. And though we are 20 countries in CARICOM, we are 20 separate countries in CARICOM. And we are in union in regard to the Treaty of Chaguaramas and what the objectives are. But those objectives are fundamentally economic and security objectives and trade objectives. They're not political objectives. So each president or prime minister, as the case may be, head of state, sees as his first interest his own countries. And that is the character of CARICOM. Mm-hmm. And I don't think we should expect anything more than that.
Okay.
If we shouldn't expect anything more than that, they've been meeting every year as heads, I think for the past 30 years. How can the heads of the core group, that would be Jamaica, Barbados, Antigua, St. Vincent, Guyana, how could the core group of leaders been meeting for over 30 years, every year? What has come out of that? There's still no political integration. There's still no total acceptance of the CCJ. And
I think what is one country's Jamaica.
Jamaica is not in the CCJ,
no.
neither Trinidad. And right. Trinidad is the seat of the CCJ.
Right, those two.
Mr. Nascimento, how could,
Perhaps those two countries have not yet totally removed the colonialism in them.
Well, I want to single out Jamaica. Mr. Nascimento, I grew up knowing that Jamaica is the radical, well, apart from Guyana. Guyana has always been, but the whole nature of this country, its Rasta culture, this music, how could it still have a governor general? And Barbados, which is the country, Mr. Nascimento, you have been along a long time.
Barbados have gotten rid of it.
Yes, yes. And I grew up seeing that as the tourism island where all the Europeans and Americans come, and it's a kind of pro-white, pro-European, pro-American country because of the tourism. But you would think Jamaica and Guyana would have been the leading. I mean, you look at these two countries and you get the sense that they're third worldist. They're not these sycophants of the West. But Jamaica is a strange place.
It's interesting. You know, I grew up as a boy in Trinidad and went to school there and came back from university and spent my first working years of my life in Trinidad and Tobago. So I regard myself as almost partly Trinidadian. And sometimes my accent will lapse into sounding a bit like a Trinidadian. And Trinidadians as a people are fiercely independent and fiercely anti-colonial. I have very good, close Trinidadian friends. And I find the fact that they are holding on to a British court as an aberration. It is not what I understand as the character of the everyday Trinidad and Tobagonian. I don't know the Jamaican people that well. I have worked in Jamaica. In fact, when I worked in the countryside in Jamaica, I had to get an interpreter. That's true. I couldn't understand a word.
The Creole pato.
Right. But I imagine a Jamaican coming here and working in the quarantine would have the same problem.
Indeed.
So, though we allegedly speak the same language, we don't speak it with the same accents. And we have our own native versions of it. So, but then those differences exist in Europe. I'm making the comparison with Europe because Europe is a political union. And as I said earlier on, I think that's the fundamental difference between us. Freddie, I cannot explain and I cannot justify. I do not support the fact that the Jamaicans and the Trinidadians still have as their final court of appeal a British court. I think it is absolutely nonsense. And I have no idea why.
Akash?
Mr. Nascimento, in relation to CARICOM, many Guyanese, both locally and in diaspora, they're of this opinion that Guyana should not be part of CARICOM because, look, it's a well-known fact that some CARICOM nations had certain immigration policies that kind of sideline Guyanese and so on. And people are saying that now, because of Guyana's newfound wealth, we have become favorable. What are your thoughts on this, Mr. Nascimento? I mean, I see this being expressed on social media quite a bit. What are your thoughts?
Well, it's a typical, I think, selfishness of people of a country. And the very fact that we are not a union and have separate economies, for instance, and separate levels of wealth. When Guyana was poor and struggling, our people were looking for an escape channel.
Indeed.
They sought to escape, for instance, into Barbados. The Barbadians, many of them, including at one time the Barbadian government, saw that as coming and taking their work, taking their jobs. They did not see them as fellow West Indians I prefer the term West Indians to Caribbeans. They saw them in some way in the way we're looking at Venezuelans. Though we've been much more welcoming, I think, to the Venezuelans than Barbados was to Guyanese. I mean, we know that there was a Guyana bench.
Yeah, that's right.
In the Barbados.
That's what I'm making reference to.
Airport, which they sat you. They sat me on that bench.
Really?
On one occasion, yes. Not for long.
No, wait.
But it did happen to me.
Well, you would have had official governmental status.
No, after that. I was long out of the cabinet when that happened to me. But I was well known. They knew who I was.
Right.
But that was the habit.
That could have been the anti-Guyanese thing rather than not knowing who you were. And
it was part of the habit. You Guyanese, go sit down there. We'll get to you.
Mm-hmm. You remember what year was that?
No, I don't. And it lasted, Freddie, for about 15 minutes.
But knowing you...
Until somebody said, you know who that is.
Mr. Nascimento, a woman recently reached out to me and she shared a story to me that broke my heart. I almost was in tears. She went to Barbados for a holiday. And she traveled for a holiday. She went there and she was subjected to a search at the airport, and they checked her bags and so on. They told her...
Is that recent?
No. And then she went, they took her to, they said, look, we suspected you. She said, what? We're going to take you for an x-ray. She went, she did the x-ray. Do you know that woman was subjected to a cavity search, to a body search? And she said while all of this is happening to her, she's asking herself, like, is this real? Is this happening to me? And for years, she's still traumatized by that. Still traumatized.
Well, one can imagine that.
Still traumatized. I mean, she just went for a holiday. She showed them, I have nothing on me, like they did the x-ray to check her, to see if there was an ink pellet showing up. And then, look, I'm not beating up in CARICOM here, right? But I'm just saying that because of these little things that happen, this is why people are of this opinion.
Well,
I'm sure it's not
Barbados,
isolated.
I mean, two things have changed, of course. We are now the rich country.
Right.
And because we're the rich country, there's a different level of respect.
Mm-hmm.
That's human nature. Trinidad and Tobago were oil rich. Barbados has always been, until actually quite recently, what I would call tourism rich. And they have oil too, though not much. So they looked at us, of the four big countries in CARICOM, they looked at us as the poorest of the four. And when we started to, in some regards, flee our own countries for a better life elsewhere, we got in the way of many Barbadians. That's not unique to Barbados. That's unique. Look what's happening in the US of A.
Yes.
Look at last night's debate between Trump and Biden. Every question that went to Trump was answered by the immigration, because he's exploiting the emotionalism of Americans who've forgotten that they are a country of immigrants. And he's exploiting that because they're now resenting immigrants coming into their country in droves and illegally. And it's the same emotion. And you heard Trump exploiting it to the fullest, complaining about these immigrants living in hotels and taking jobs away from Americans, Same Americans, who were part of an immigrant development. Trump himself, his wife is an immigrant.
His father was an immigrant.
But people don't think that way anymore. They think nationally first. They think selfishly first. And I believe that and I say this as a Guyanese, so perhaps because I'm a Guyanese, the Guyanese are more generously disposed to foreigners and other CARICOM brothers and sisters than any of the others. We're more open, we're more welcoming. Even now that we have money and wealth superior to all of the rest of them, we still have open borders to a very large extent, and more generously disposed to welcome foreigners into our country than any of the other CARICOM countries. But I don't think that is a fair criticism of CARICOM and what CARICOM is all about.
That's right. Yeah, and as I said, it may not be an isolated case, but these are the questions out there in the public, and that is why I want to have your take on it also.
Sure.
The refusal to join the CCJ as the appellate court cut across Bastille Pandey, Manning, Kamla Bissessar. So it's not a thing that's residing in a particular political party in Trinidad or ethnic group.
It's an attitude.
And then you have Jamaica still with Governor General, and of course they're not in the CCJ. Is this a nagging but horrible leftover of colonialism after 50-something years?
Well, of course it is. I mean, Canada has a Governor General.
Yeah, but they have more in common with the UK. They are Caucasian.
I think Australia does too, doesn't it?
Yeah. But
and those are powerful independent countries.
But one would think that...
that's partly, to interrupt you, I think that's more traditional and habitual than any serious political position. That's my view, really.
Well, I can understand Canada and Australia. The leadership there and the people there, when they look at themselves, and look at the UK and they look at the Canada, they see some kind of ethnic solidarity. But what does Jamaica have ethnically in solidarity with the UK population? I think the UK population is 80% Caucasian. But even if you...
Changing every day.
But even if you retain the Governor Generalship, I mean, he doesn't have any real power. To have people travel to the UK, you have to, the lawyer has to get a visa, a Jamaican lawyer has to get a visa, he has to stay in a hotel. All of that for an appeal? The thing is almost surreal.
But what are you asking of me, Freddie? Are you asking me to explain the Jamaican position? I can't.
It's inexplicable.
It is a hangover of a colonial attitude, which is what you said. They have not yet escaped it. I think it was Burnham once said, who said that you can take the country out of the colony, but you can't take the colony out of the man.
Well, knowing Burnham was very good at those kind of things.
Or you could take the man out of the colony, but you couldn't take the colony out of the man. Something like that. And then that's true. That there are still Guyanese who would argue that independence was a mistake. And we would be better off as a colony. There are still Guyanese who will argue that.
There must be an infinitesimal minority.
Well, it's getting smaller and smaller, but I've heard that argument before. My own uncle, Peter Degas, was not pro-independence.
Yeah, so Lionel Locke and the rest of them. Right.
I actually split with Peter de Gaar and caused a huge rift in the party when I was chairman of the Guys, the youth movement.
Yeah.
And I went on a stage and publicly said that the youth movement of the United Force, which of course I headed, was pro-independence. When the leader of the United Force was anything but. So I've always had a very different attitude. You know, I can't explain why. I went to school in England from the age of 13. I grew up in my formative years in an English environment, an English public school, which of course, as you know, is a private school. But I never ever thought of myself as anything but a West Indian. And I looked like a Caucasian. In fact, I probably am. When the West Indies cricket team came to play cricket in England, I was there cheering for them. So it's difficult for me as a person to understand retaining anything remotely like a colonial attitude. But they are, as I've said, Guyanese and other West Indians too. And indeed at the leadership level, which explains the fact that those two countries still look to the British court as their final court of appeal. It is a total, absolute aberration of reality.
When CARIFTA was being negotiated and the Secretariat was being assigned to a particular CARICOM country in Guyana wanted, you were working with the Forbes Burnham government at that time, right? Were you privy to any of these things? Why the other heads chose Guyana for the Secretariat? Did it have to do with largeness of Guyana, location, straddling Caribbean and South America, Burnham's personality? You were around at that time.
The latter.
Burnham's personality?
Absolutely.
You were working with...
I think it's fair to say that Burnham, together with Sonny Ramphel, never forget Sonny Ramphel, were the advocates not of a trade agreement. They were advocates of a political union from the very beginning. And I think it's fair to say that Burnham, perhaps with Eric Williams, Barrow too, but to a lesser extent, were the drivers of a Caribbean unity, a Caribbean community, politically. So it's not too surprising that the headwaters came here.
Okay. Akash?
Mr. Nascimento, let's talk about one of our sister CARICOM country that really needs, it needs everything, Haiti. In February of this year, I know the CARICOM heads of government met with the embattled Prime Minister Ariel Henry. It was really to talk about the unrelenting gang violence in that country. Over the last weekend, for the first of 400, a batch of 400 Kenyan, heavily armed Kenyan police officers.
Ironically, when Kenya's in trouble.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. So, but they're there, and I see today. I saw Barbecue has called for dialogue. Do you think this is finally the solution to Haiti's problems? but really
You
the
know,
gang violence.
Haiti is an unending and incurable disaster.
Oh my goodness. Man, you broke my heart by saying that, but it's the fact, eh?
I can't be incurable. Kid.
I believe it is.
So
I mean,
it's the
barbecue on
it's-
stock now.
So it's it's CARICOM's unfortunate black sheep
Or white sheep,
or white sheep.
whatever
yeah.
kind of sheep.
Yeah, yeah.
But when you look at the history of Haiti, from its very beginning, has it ever had a democratic government? That's where you have to look. There's never really been democracy in Haiti, of any kind. Colonialism or no colonialism.
Aristide was popularly elected.
Yes,
Oh, but then he was overthrown.
exactly. The Americans have tried. They poured money into Haiti. I'm not sufficiently expert to explain why Haiti, as distinct from all of the other CARICOM countries, has remained a
pariah?
total disaster. And I don't have much confidence in what we're doing now. You have to ask yourself the question, if Haiti is a CARICOM member state, it's actually an associated state member, I think. Why are African troops or police going in there and not Caribbean? Why not a police force from CARICOM? If you're going to put a military solution to what I think is a political problem. And I don't know what the answer to that is. Perhaps we don't have sufficient police or armed police who are powerful enough. I mean, if you look at what Kenya has, the Kenyan police use tanks. They're a highly developed military force. So, and for some reason the Kenyan political leadership volunteered their police. But it is surprising that we have to go to an African country to get a military force to bring order to a CARICOM country. I think President Ali has played a fairly leading and active role in the recent discussions that have led to some attempt once again to create a solution to Haiti. But there have been many attempts, external attempts. But Haiti is a typical definition of a failed state, in my view. The DR, the Dominican Republic, have shut the door on them.
Yes.
Same country, same
That's
island.
right, yeah.
Compare the DR with Haiti.
Cheese and chalk. Yeah, it is.
I've recently come from the DR. The DR are now actually helping us in Guyana with certain elements of expertise and investment. We've developed a very close relationship with the deal.
Yeah, there's no resident ambassador.
That's right.
He lives opposite me.
We now have a flight.
And he's a very fine man. I've gotten to know him.
Yeah, I've seen him. He lives opposite me. I see him every day. Yeah. Kit.
So how do you explain Haiti? I don't know.
It's heartbreaking.
And so it's just going to limp on and limp on and limp.
I said it was incurable.
It can't be a UN solution?
I said it was incurable. If I were a political leader of a CARICOM country, I wouldn't use that terminology. Mm-hmm. Because we have to have an attitude towards a fellow CARICOM country of always trying to help them and solve their problems and work with them. That's part of the CARICOM objectives.
I'd like to explore your thoughts on your two countries that seem to have at the subliminal level some resentment. And I think the resentment comes more from the Guyanese side. It has been said for decades, not years, for decades, Trinidad has been cheating on the Treaty of Chaguaramos, the trade rules, and the CSME. And it came to a point where Mr. Timothy Tucker, 2 years ago, who was president of the Georgetown Chamber, come and said, let's pull out of CARICOM. And that now you've got the continuing thing.
That's loose talk.
But Kit, you send mangoes to Trinidad. They say something has met the requirement, the head or this. You send fish to Trinidad. You send beef to Trinidad. There's always a problem. And those things come into Guyana, sign off, it's there on the shelf. Now, you've got the honey issue. Guyana can't export honey to Trinidad. And now you have this thing with the DDL milk, which seems to have been resolved.
that was not a Trinidadian fault, the DDL issue. That was DDL's own fault. By not observing the rules, and the company that they were doing business with in Trinidad did not observe the rules. That got fixed very quickly when we spoke to the Trinidadians at a political level. Overnight it got fixed.
But there's this constant complaint.
But you're not wrong. You're not wrong. You are correct that there's been a Trinidadian public service attitude to violate the spirit and sometimes the laws of CARICOM. It's true. So what do you ask me to explain why?
No, I'm actually how you feel as a semi-Trinidadian.
I don't claim to be Trinidadian. I'm a full Guyanese. I just grew up in Trinidad.
But the accent still comes back every now and then, you said, right?
I think all in the program, you say you consider yourself also Trinidad.
No. He says that he said sometimes the accent comes. So there is a little bit of Trini within you that...
There is. I mean, you don't grow up as a young boy and then you come back and you live in the country and you work for years and you don't have some sort of affinity for it. And I've had sporting... I'm the only man alive who's played rugby for both Trinidad and Tobago and Guyana.
Oh. That's a distance.
Only man alive in Trinidad and Guyana.
In the Caribbean.
In the Caribbean.
Yes, in the world.
In the world,
In the world.
There was 4 of us at one time. And I'm the only one still living. So I can say I have represented Trinidad and Tobago at sport. Against Guyana. At one stage, when I was living in Trinidad. But no, I'm 100% Guyanese, and I find the Trinidadian public service attitude absolutely intolerable and unacceptable.
There was a prime minister in Trinidad named Patrick Mannion, and surprisingly, he said, "Look, this CARICOM integration thing is going too slow." And he gave birth to the Manning Initiative, in which Guyana, Barbados, and Trinidad would go beyond the existing shape of CARICOM.
To become political?
More close, yes. Shouldn't there be now an Ali initiative, similar to the Manning Initiative? We seem to have an extreme closeness to Barbados.
Can't you recognize that President Ali is pointing in that direction?
Very good. When you see him often, you're one of his consultants. When next you see him, you're going to raise that with him?
I don't need to raise it with him. I think it is in his DNA.
But
he is a Caribbean man. I said so earlier on.
Yes.
So we're going to have the Ali initiative. But you said just now that...
Well, I'm not promising anything. I cannot speak for the president. I only speak to him.
You said just now Rowley seemed to be the non-starter.
That's in regard to the Venezuelan issue.
Not CARICOM integration.
One could draw a conclusion from his attitude to the Venezuelan issue. But there again, you see, that is self-interest. He's attempting to do a deal, an oil and gas deal with Venezuela, in his country's own interest. And because of that, he's not 100% raising the flag on behalf of Guyana. That's how it works.
Akash?
Look, in a few weeks from July 10 to 12, Guyana will be hosting the Caribbean Investment Forum, CIF.
Yes.
Right. What does this mean for business in Guyana, business in CARICOM? Because this is going to be a big forum. You know, what does it mean? Because now, as you rightly said, we're a wealthy big brother. We are doing pretty good, and everybody's coming.
We are the rich big brother.
Yeah, we are the rich big brother, right? So what does CIF mean? 2024 mean for business and Guyana as a whole and the Caribbean?
Well, the fact it's been held here is important. The focus is on Guyana.
Would this serve as a forum where we can discuss
Trinidad and
immigrants in Guyana also, because Guyana need immigrants to.
Well, let's deal with that.
Right.
That's a very important point you bring up. Right now, our population is much too small to deal with the pace of development that money has caused. And the government has recognized that. Vice President Jagdeo has actually spoken to it. And I happen to know it's under serious consideration. We are running out of people, skilled people. And we can train everybody we have. We still won't have enough.
Yeah.
And I go back to my uncle Peter de Gaar. All those years ago, Peter de Gaar said that the problem for Guyana is not that we're a people without land, we're a land without people. I remember that. And in fact, the UF's manifesto,
Highway to Happiness,
was based on that thinking. But let's come to the present day.
Yes.
You cannot but recognize that we're running out of skilled people. There is 100% employment of skilled people in this country already. The people who don't work are people who don't want to work.
I believe you.
Guyanese.
Yes, that's true.
There's no one in this country that cannot get a job if he really wants one, at every level.
The construction business should take care of the unemployed. If you're unemployed, you can get a labor worker to the construction site, fetching cement, making cement, fetching blocks.
We have Venezuelans doing jobs that Guyanese could be doing.
And we should be thankful to those Venezuelans
We
who are
should,
here.
indeed.
We should be.
I have some work being done at my home right now as we speak. And the contractor is employing Venezuelans.
Yeah. They show up to work.
And they work damn hard.
Yeah. They show up to work at 6 in the morning if you tell them to come. They won't tell you that they drink 2 days and they couldn't come to work.
Or they won't tell you it's raining and they can't come to work.
Right, yes. But how do we fix this? But we need people urgently.
But,
how do we?
Well, how we fix it is bring them in. We're going to have to import people into the country. How we do it has to be handled very carefully politically.
Right.
Let's call a spade a spade. If we go to the Caribbean, most of the population of the Caribbean are of African descent. If you bring them here and you assume that Africans are going to vote for the PNC,
Yes. It's always an issue.
then it's changing the demographics, the political demographics.
So there's going to be some
If
outcry
you go to India and Sri Lanka, where there are all sorts of skills we could use, and
They
bring
can vote
them
for
here,
PPP.
the same story, and the same argument, and the same political fight you'll have. So do, in my view, my personal view, I haven't discussed this
As a
with
solution, the
anybody in the
Venezuelans.
country. No, I think the solution is to do what they're doing in the Middle East.
Qatar.
You don't make them citizens. They can't vote.
Right.
Whoever you bring, whatever skills they come with, they come to work on a contract for however many years. You pay them, but you never give them citizenship.
And if they choose to stay after 4 or 5 years,
then they can get it, perhaps.
Okay.
But why
That's
are
what's
we...
happening in the Middle East now.
Yes.
It's what's happening in Saudi. It's what's happening in Qatar. And it's the way to do it. And I think that's what the government is looking at.
The last CARICOM head meeting, there was talk about speeding up free movement of people, but it hasn't happened as yet.
To some degree, we do have, CARICOM does provide for free movement of people. I'm not sure of the regulations governing it, but they have to have certain skills, etc. I think you have to have a job, something like that.
So once you have a job, I thought under the free movement of people regulation, you just go on a plane and land in another country and look for a job.
You could get a job in Trinidad and Tobago as a journalist if you have one. You could apply for a job, get one, go there. Nothing to stop you. Or anywhere else in the CARICOM.
We have Europe has a Schengen visa. Once you get a Schengen visa, you travel all over.
That entitles you to travel in Europe for the period of the visa.
Yeah, but
so you're still a visitor. You're not going to work there.
But the EU free movement of people, you don't have borders.
No,
a doctor could go.
No,
and
don't.
you would welcome that.
I was in Switzerland visiting my grandson, who lives on the border between Switzerland and France. And every day he would drive across the border to a supermarket in France and shop.
It's cheaper.
Yes, and no border. We just drove.
Should we have that here in CARICOM?
I think we should.
And
I think we'll get there.
Okay, I hope we get there while I'm still on planet Earth.
And perhaps Mr. Nascimento too.
He isn't going anywhere. He isn't going anywhere. Let me tell you something. When I saw how Biden couldn't perform at 8-1, this man is a giant.
Indeed.
I saw this man coming out to the car at Master Supermarket. Hi, Freddie. Just said hi, Freddie, and came and walked up to me I think he's smoking some herb from Afghanistan.
You're gonna get me in trouble.
Smoking herb from
Afghanistan.
Herbs from Afghanistan are illegal.
What's the hashish?
Herb from Afghanistan illegal. It probably come in a nice jar, and it's herbs from any other.
So perhaps you suggested as a fountain of youth.
Freddie, on a previous program with you, I remember you asking me how come, what's my secret? And I pointed across over there where my wife was. I said, marry a young woman.
Okay.
And
there's some truth in that. And of course, I'm joking, but there's some truth in that, actually. If you marry someone younger than you, there's an incentive to live longer for them.
Yeah. So it's right. It's the physical, psychological connection.
Yes.
But you have anything more as we go on of the time? I want to ask him.
Yes, one last thing I want to ask you. Well, actually, two quick things. First of all, I'm curious to know how you got the name Kit. There.
He's asked me that before, actually. So
he used to carry around a kit with him, I assume, a rugby kit.
No. You've forgotten what I told you.
Yeah.
My mother named me Christopher.
Mm-hmm.
But she named me Christopher of a hero of a famous set of novels that she used to read, in which the hero is called Christopher Holmes, and he was always called Kit. So though I was named Christopher by my mother in order for her to call me Kit.
Yeah.
So I've grown up with that name from birth.
Okay. And quickly, what has to...
It's that simple.
Yeah. Cricket seems to be the one thing that brings us together every time. The recent test match win in Australia seemed to have really gelled us a little bit more. What as somebody who played rugby internationally?
Well, my father kept wicket for the West Indies.
Test?
Yes.
Wow. Your father was a test player?
Yes.
Wow. In the 3 previous interviews, did we go through that? Did you mention that?
I may have done.
What was his name?
Nascimento.
Wow.
So there was a test wicket keeper named Nascimento?
That is correct.
I didn't know that. How many tests he played?
I think he played in 1 or 2. He never traveled with the team.
Okay. Wow. Okay. But what has to be done for cricket in the Caribbean?
Picture is up in the GCC.
I'll go check it out. Yeah. What has to be done for cricket in the West Indies, though, for us to become, we need.
It seems to be the only institution that keeps CARICOM closely knit.
I despair of cricket.
Really?
In the West Indies, and I'll tell you why. Because I don't think that those who play it at international level are forced by those who manage it and those who coach it to understand that at the international level of sport today, and I speak of someone who's in sport and successfully so over a period of time in rugby and in motor racing, you have to be 100% fit. You look at a West Indian team, especially if they're 2 innings. They're good in the first. When they start to get tired,
break down.
Yes, you could see it.
Yeah.
People said that about Shivnarayan Chandrapal. Who was the famous former English captain? Peterson. Kevin Peterson wrote, I think in his autobiography, that every time Chandrapal made 100, he doesn't come out the field. Yeah, he said that in his
we've been hearing that about our boy Hetty Maya also. But Mr. Kissoon, you're close.
I want to ask him before we close. The CARICOM visa is automatic for 3 months. So you go into shouldn't we be the bolder one and say, look, you could come in and the visa is automatic for 1 year?
Why not?
Yeah, Guyana is expanding. Guyana, we can take in. I think Christopher Nascimento, I think as early o'clock there should be the Ali Initiative to resurrect the Manin Initiative and bring some CARICOM countries closer to what they are at the moment. And I think we're more likely to have a closer, deep relation with Barbados and Guyana. I think you can see it unfolding.
Well, we already have a very close relationship between the Prime Minister of Barbados and our President. You can see that they understand each other very well. You can see that they work very well together. You can see that they appreciate each other.
Obviously you're Guyanese and you have some fondness for Trinidad. I don't want to say your second country. Outside of those two countries, which other country, I don't want to say island, which other country in CARICOM you find enticing, find inviting, apart from your own country in Trinidad?
Well, I can tell you one which is not answering your question, but I can tell you one which I think is very well led at the moment, and that's Antigua. And that's because of Ron Sanders. Ron Sanders, as you know, is Antigua's Guyanese.
Ambassador to the UN. Yeah.
Yes, and he's also the holds a senior position in the Organization of American States. And he's Antigua's ambassador there. But he has been a major influencer in Antiguan politics for many, many years. And I give Ron credit for where Antigua is politically today and the attitude of Antigua towards international politics. That's not an answer to your question, but the only countries I have lived in are Trinidad and Tobago and Barbados. I have lived in Barbados.
Well, you worked in Jamaica, you said.
I worked in Jamaica, yes. Mm.
Look,
so I don't have a particular fondness for any of them in particular, but I know Trinidad and Tobago very well for obvious reasons. And I have worked in Barbados. I know Barbados very well. And I've been very involved in rugby with all of those countries.
Before we go, would you definitively say that CARICOM as an integration movement is a successful one and that the people of CARICOM is one of the more enlightened part of the world?
Yes, I would.
Okay, well, but
I have a caveat.
What's that?
They need to do much more in terms of understanding the value of unity and the value of being collectively powerful.
Let's close on the note of that autobiography. It should be out very soon. Now,
You're talking about mine?
Yeah, I'm talking about yours. That is going to be one of the most widely read local books in Guyana when it's out. This guy who's been around for 60-something years has been a consultant to 5 presidents. I have known you. Let me say that. How many? You work with Burnham.
All but Chetty.
All but Chetty. So that's
Chetty,
7.
Chetty and Janet.
Right. Yeah. So that's about 6. I'm telling you now up front, I'm expecting a free copy.
Of course. That's a signed copy.
Kit, thanks for being with us here on Analyzing CARICOM. It's been a pleasure. It's always a pleasure talking to somebody as vastly experienced as you are. On behalf of my co-host, Akash Persaud, thanks for being with us. We will see you next Wednesday. Bye-bye.